Hello, welcome everyone. Thanks for the shout out, Raf. There are actually two of me today. I don't know if you could see me, the other me at the bottom of the screen there. Oh, I see we have two professors with us tonight. Michael, what are you drinking over there?
It's just water, I swear.
No, that's okay. If you had something more, I would want you to share it with the group, you know? So you weren't drinking Corona, huh?
Not this time.
All right, so I see we're filling up. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the schedule for this evening. It's a little bit different than usual. First of all, I have a couple of new amazing mentors that have joined us this week, so that's going to be really exciting. Also, this schedule is only going to have one breakout session instead of two. And the way it's going to work is we're going to start out everyone together like we are now. I'll share a little bit of an introduction about God, about Torah, about Shavuos. Then we're going to break out into our breakout rooms for about 45 minutes or so, where you're going to go through some amazing source material on trying to explore the question of, did God really give us the Torah at Mount Sinai? You know, is that just a legend? Is that a myth? Is something that really happened? And you're going to get to go analyze it on your own, see the sources inside, go through some of that evidence, and draw your own conclusions. After you have that session, about 45 minutes, we're going to come back here to the main room, and we're then going to sort of together go on a journey back in time. I'm actually going to do time travel. This is the first Zoom virtual time travel experience ever, and we're going to do that together. We're actually going to transport ourselves back 3,300 years ago to the Sinai experience and sort of see it for ourselves so we can really make an informed decision about what really happened. And then 2 days from now, 2 nights from now, Thursday night, we are going to relive that divine experience, that divine connection as we re-accept the Torah once more. So before we break out into the room, just a little bit of an introduction. You know, one of the questions a lot of people ask is, does God really exist? You know, is he out there? Maybe yes, maybe no. Does anyone know who the first Jew was?
Abraham.
Abraham's excellent. That Shira said that?
Yeah.
I would say it was Noah.
So Enrique, Noah was one of the common guesses, and that's probably I would have gone for, or Adam and Eve. You know, because if you think about it, Adam and Eve were the first people ever. God spoke to them. And then you had Noah, and God spoke to him and saved him from the flood. And Abraham, God spoke. So what makes Abraham more than the others? You know, God spoke to all of them. What made Abraham stand out? And there was really a big difference in how God interacted with each of them. With Adam, what happened? God creates Adam and Eve, and they're in this garden, and God says, Adam, Eve, like, what? It's me, God. Like, oh, wow, it's God. Oh, amazing, right? So they believed in God. And what happened with Noah? Noah's raising a family, and God says, Noah. He goes, what? It's me, God. Flood's coming. Oh, flood. Wow, thanks so much. Build an ark, and great. With Abraham, he was raised in a home of idolatry. He was raised in a home with a lack of morality, with principles that are antithetical to God. And he, on his own, figured out that there must be one all-powerful God. So the truth is, there are lots and lots and lots of arguments people can share about the existence of God. I'm only going to share one with you now. I'm going to share with you the argument that Abraham used, how our forefather Abraham figured it out. Because since all of us come from him, I often find that it resonates with us because he's part of our family. So this is how Abraham came to the conclusion. And it's probably best explained by someone that lived much later. You may have heard of Sir Isaac Newton, a world-renowned physicist. So Isaac Newton also believed in God. And he had an apprentice who did not believe in God. And one day, his apprentice walked into the room, and he saw a beautiful model of the solar system. there was the sun in the middle, and there were strings connecting all the planets, and the planets were actually rotating and revolving around the sun, relative proportion to real life. Some were going faster, some slower, some bigger, some smaller. Saturn had the rings. I mean, it was gorgeous, a magnificent, magnificent model. And the apprentice said, "This is beautiful. This is amazing." And he was like, "Oh, you like it, huh?" He's like, I mean, but how did you make it?" Newton says, "What do you mean? I mean, how did you assemble this complex model?" And he says, you won't believe me when I tell you how it got here." He's like, "Oh, tell me." So Newton says, "I walked into the room, and on the floor, I saw a big pile of everything you now see in this model. There was cardboard, there was tape, there was glue, there was paint, there were all sorts of materials and string, and I gave the pile a huge kick, and it went flying into the air, and it happened to land exactly like our solar system. And it happened to form the sun and the stars and the planets, and the string connected all the planets to each other, and it happened to start rotating around each other, and Saturn got its rings, and everything was color-coded. You know, land on Earth, let's say, water was blue, and forests were green, and all the land masses were color-coded, and it just happened like that." And his apprentice is like, "What are you on?" He's like, no, it really happened. So it's like, there's no way this could have happened by accident, by chance. And he says, "Wait a minute, scientist to scientist. Is it not possible, if all of the ingredients were there on the floor, and I gave it a kick, is it not technically, mathematically possible, however small, that it could have landed like our solar system?" So the apprentice has to admit, yes, I guess technically it's possible, but the chances are so low, only a fool would believe that this model came about without a designer, without a creator. So Newton says to him, "Why don't you listen to what you're saying? If you think this mere model of the solar system had to have a designer, had to have a creator, how much more so the real thing?" And the real solar system is much more complex than just a bunch of circles rotating around with string. The real solar system, you don't just have blue for water, you have actual water. You have life, plant life, animal life, human life, even the eye. The eye itself is so intricate, so complex. Abraham walked around, he looked at the flower and said, "This is so complex, it couldn't just come by chance. There must be a designer, there must be a creator." And that was Abraham's argument, that things, when are left by themselves, generally become less complex and less beautiful. And when someone is involved in the process, then you see design, then you see creative activity, and something makes sense in the end. So the fact that we have such an amazing solar system where everything in this universe needs to be just in place to make it happen in terms of the elements, everything had to be the right ratio with gravity, everything had to work out just right, that the odds are, I think Stephen Hawking even says, the odds that our universe would have come about by chance without any sort of designer are the same odds as having 10,000 monkeys with no prior training. You put them in front of typewriters and all of them happen to type the Declaration of Independence. That scenario is the same likelihood that our world came into existence without a designer. So yes, it's technically possible, but a person sort of needs to have blind faith to really believe that it happened by chance. So I realize I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm speaking to people that already have a very strong sense of faith, a strong sense of God. And the real question for us is going to be, fine, even if I believe in God, who says Judaism got it right? Who says that God interacted with us 3,000 years ago and gave us a Torah? Maybe he exists, maybe he created the world, but maybe he just walked up and left. So what we're going to do now is we're going to break out into our sessions. We'll have, like I said, about 45 minutes or so, maybe even 50 minutes, to sort of explore that question. And I challenge you to come to this discussion with an open mind, with an open heart, and to ask questions and to inquire and to see what conclusions you reach. I'm looking forward to seeing you back here for the next session when you come back. Isabella, how'd it go today?
It was really interesting. I really liked the discussion group and what I learned.
I'm so happy to hear that. Shoshana, how about you?
It was good. I thought it was really interesting as well.
Okay, good. Natalia, you're back. We missed you last week. How'd it go today so far?
It was good. I came in a little bit late, but I enjoyed it.
Okay, good. Ben, how's it going for you today so far?
Good. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, good. How is your discussion group?
It was very good. Daniel is a great teacher.
Amazing. All right, guys, we're taking a very short 2-minute break. You could stretch, do your little exercises, your jumping jacks, whatever you want to do. And then we are going to go on a virtual grand tour, time traveling back to Mount Sinai, where you could sort of see for yourselves what actually happened. And at the end of this session, you're going to have a chance to really make an informative decision about what really transpired and to make your Shavuos that much more meaningful. So a 2-minute countdown has begun. Get your snacks, get your drinks, obviously the non-alcoholic ones, and we'll see you back here soon.
Why the judgment?
if you have something alcoholic, you have to share it with the group. So.
I know it helps Eric think, though.
Okay, by all means, we want you to think. So whatever helps you, as long as it's legal. And if you have a Corona beer, that's even better.
It's a good way to stay hydrated.
Liron, how's your group going?
Good.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to pause for myself for a second.
Green apple tart.
Cold green apple.
Oh, it's specific now.
With crunchy peanut butter. With crunchy peanut butter. Preferably Skippy, but you can also use it all natural. Or with almond butter, it's also really good.
Wow.
Okay.
Billy, you have a whole menu of things to choose now.
Okay.
Professor Daniel, did you ever try the apple with peanut butter?
I never
Apple
tried
with
it.
peanut butter. I eat something that makes my wife shiver is I put salt on my chocolate, and I like it very much, but I know some people may not enjoy that.
I like that too.
I like that
Good.
too, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so when we're done tonight, if anyone wants to stay after, we're going to have 3 opportunities. The first is you want to share your favorite foods. Clearly, there's a lot for us to learn. But on a more serious note, or maybe not, 2 other things that we'd love to do for anyone who has time to stay afterwards. Number 1, if you have follow-up questions on tonight, I know sometimes you don't always have a chance to ask your question, especially in a big setting. So if you have follow-up questions on the material tonight, I'm happy to stick around for as long as necessary. But secondly, if anyone wants to share feedback about the program in general, and about today, and just how it's going, then stick around. We'll get you recorded, and maybe you'll be famous one day. So so that will be when we finish up tonight. So at this point, I'd like to ask everyone to please turn their videos back on. We'd love to see you all as we are getting ready to go on our grand time-traveling adventure. We are on the cusp of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, just 2 days away. And you probably know there are people called Bible critics. And these people, what they live for essentially is to talk about the lack of authenticity of the Torah. And from their perspective, it's basically a made-up document. You know, perhaps it was Moshe and the Zakanim, Moses and the elders. They're back there at Mount Sinai, 3 million people, and they said, you know what? People here are barbaric. People, you know, if you don't like someone, you chop off their head. We'd like to make the world a better place. But if we just tell people, become better, they'll chop off our heads. So instead, they had an idea. Let's pretend that we spoke to God. Let's pretend God gave us these rules, and then they'll follow the rules. They're not going to listen to me, Moses, but if I tell them, hey, I spoke to God, and God said, don't murder and don't steal, you know, so they'll listen. So one of the suggestions by Bible critics is basically that Moses and the elders were very smart, and they were actually moral people. They wanted to share goodness. But they would not be successful on their own. And so instead they made up this Torah, pretended that it came from God. So what I want to do with you guys now is we're going to travel back in time. Let's pretend that I'm Moses and you're the elders. Okay, and if you're ever telling this over, you could be Moses and we'll be the elders. But, so I'm Moses, you're the elders, and we together want to trick 3 million people into thinking that this Torah is not really from God, but it's from, we're making it up. So we want to trick them that it's from God. Even though we made it up, we want to trick them that it's from God. And our goal is, it's a idealistic goal. We want to share goodness. So if you are on my team, you're one of my elders, and you know that we want to share goodness and get people to be better people, what are some of the laws you would put in the Torah? In this made-up book that we're writing, what are some suggestions of laws that we would put in? Anyone have an idea?
Well, isn't this what all kind of philosophers have been trying to do for the past 2,000 years, like since the Greek people all the way till now?
Yes. So what would be a law? Enrique, if you were picking a law, a moral law for made-up Torah, what would you put in?
Okay, do not kill.
Excellent. All right, who has another suggestion for us? Another law.
Do not question where it's
from.
from.
That's a good one, Rafael, because we don't want people to question us, right? If we put a law in there, you better follow it. No questioning, right? And if you think about it, a lot of the laws in the Torah seem to support this theory. Things like don't steal, things like respect your elders. That's good for us when you guys are elders, right? So far, this seems to check that these Bible critics are right. This really could all be a conspiracy and all made up. So then I say to you, my fellow elders, I've got a great law that I want to add to our book here. You say, what? What is it? What is it we want to hear? I say, guys, let's have a law that, since a lot of people were farmers back then and worked the land, let's have a law that every 7 years, no one works the land. Meaning 6 years, let them work and harvest and everything, but once every 7 years, all of the land should not be worked. Now, the benefit of that kind of law, Celine, go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question about that. In Israel, they still do that. So how do they gain money, the people that work in the land, if they're not working for a whole year?
They don't.
Excellent question. Let's save the question for today for later, but let's talk about then, what happened then. Because Celine's question is a very good one for what happened back then. So going back then, when we made up this law, again, Celine, we're pretending that there's no God, right? That we're just making up the law for ourselves. And the law is sensible in the sense that if you know anything about farming, every year when you work the land, the nutrients become weaker and weaker. So if you let the land rest once every 7 years, the land replenishes itself and then is stronger in the 8th year. So it's a very healthy thing in the farming world to have breaks every so often. So again, if we were very smart, it makes a lot of sense. But what's the downside? If we tell everyone, you must not work once every 7 years, everyone the same year, no working the land, what might go wrong during that 7th year?
You have a famine. There's no food.
Yeah, people might starve and die, right? Meaning they didn't have like import-export like we have today. They didn't have major refrigeration capacity like we have today. And if the entire population, all 3 million, stopped working the land, stopped farming for an entire year, basically it would be a death sentence to your whole. So even if we started this religion, got everyone to follow us, it would only last 7 years because they would all starve and die. So can anyone think of a suggestion as to how we could achieve the benefit of letting land rest once every 7 years, but not have the drawback of everyone starving and dying?
Well, actually, I want to say something, and I don't know how well I remember it because I learned this in like freshman year of high school, but there was the 3-field system. Oh, am I in here?
Go ahead, we hear you.
Oh, okay, something happened, okay. There was something called the 3-field system, which every 3 years, farmers would have like 3 fields, and what would happen was they would work 2 fields out of the 3, and each year one of the fields would be resting. So I mean, It's not every 7 years, but that's how they would.
Same principle, exactly. So you, my fellow elders, would say to me, Moses, we like your idea of letting the land rest, but don't make them all rest at the same time. Do a rotation. 1/7 of the land rest in year 1, 1/7 year 2, or divide up by tribes. These tribes year 1, these tribes year 2. So basically, there are a lot of easy solutions to getting the benefits of the land resting and not the drawbacks of everyone starving and dying. And I say to you, no, I don't want to do that. You know why? Because we're gonna have everyone rest the same year, and we're simply gonna put a guarantee in this Torah that we're making up. We'll guarantee them that there's gonna be a miracle, and there's going to be a magical triple crop in the 6th year. It's gonna give them enough food to last the 6th, 7th, and 8th year. And this way, no one has to starve and die. So you who know we're making this up, what would be the drawback of using my strategy? Any suggestions? What would go wrong potentially if we guarantee them there's going to be a miracle of a triple crop in the 6th year?
Well, you can't actually guarantee a miracle.
What? Who said that?
Me. If it doesn't happen, then like you're gonna be accused.
Right. You guys, you all got it. Basically, we've made the religion up. How can we offer a miracle in 6 years from now? That's crazy. Meaning, if you're God and you actually wrote the Torah, it makes a lot of sense to offer miracles because you could fulfill the miracles. But for us who are making this whole thing up, if we guarantee them a triple crop in the 6th year, we're pretty much guaranteeing our religion is going to last only 6 years because it's not going to come true. Not only that, the land gets weaker each year. So the 6th year, scientifically, is going to be the weakest of the 6th year. So if anything, we should have promised a triple crop in the 8th year. First of all, it will look a little bit bigger. And secondly, if it doesn't happen, we could say, oh, you know why there was no triple crop? You guys sinned. You didn't rest properly in the 7th year. So we have some sort of like fail-safe in place. But to tell them you get a triple crop in the 6th year, we're pretty much setting ourselves up for failure. And either everyone's going to leave us in the 6th year or they're all going to die in the 7th year. But basically, religion is done. Okay, so it wouldn't make any sense. But guess what? The actual Torah does just that. And I'm going to show you now inside so you can see for yourselves. You're going to go right here to the Torah. This is what it says in the actual Torah. For 6 years you may plant your fields, prune your vineyards, and harvest your crops. But the 7th year is a Sabbath for the land. And what happens though, if you ask, what will we eat in the 7th year? We have not planted, nor have we harvested our crops. We're going to starve and die? No problem. Look what the Torah actually says. I will direct my blessing to you in the 6th year, and the land will produce enough crops for 3 years. So the Torah itself actually gives this guarantee. So number one, if you were making up the Torah, you would never write such a guarantee in there. And number two,
that it has been kept every 7 years since we got the Torah.
Through the temple's destruction. I mean, this law of Shemitah only applies through the temple when the temple's there. So I mean, from the time the Jews went to Israel all the way until the temple was destroyed. Nowadays, we still do it on a rabbinic level, other things, but it only applied then. And so the amazing thing is that A, they didn't starve and die. B, people didn't say, oh, wow, this miracle didn't happen. We reject you. And C, other neighboring countries actually had a lot of historical reports about unusual crops every 7 years that happen to correspond with exactly our 6th year in a 7-year cycle. So I present that as piece of evidence number one. But now I say to you, my fellow elders, since you like my first idea so much, I've got another great idea. Let's have a law that 3 times each year, all the Jewish males should gather together in the temple. Let's have a law 3 times each year, all of the males have to go to the temple for a reunion, and which obviously has benefits to it. You know, Jewish unity, get everyone together, very nice. Let me ask you though, what's the downside? If all the Jewish males get the same 3 dates each year, get together in the temple, what might go wrong while we're doing that? Any suggestions? Stumped. Think about Israel's neighbors and how much they love us. What might happen if all the males gather in the temple 3 times each year on the same 3 dates each year?
It would be extremely predictable and extremely dangerous.
Why would it be dangerous, Rachel?
Because if it's a given that they're there, then it's a very big potential for terrorist attacks.
Yes. If you think about it, guys, Israel is not loved by the neighboring countries. And historically, they've never been loved. So if they all saw every single year, the same 3 dates each year, all the Jewish men, all the soldiers would leave the border and would all head into the temple, they might attack. You know, they might do something. So I say to you guys, don't worry. I've got an idea for that. We'll simply offer them a guarantee that no one's going to attack on those 3 dates. We'll just put in the Torah that don't worry about defenses because no one's going to attack you on those 3 dates. What would you say to me if I suggested offering that guarantee when we're making up this Torah?
You're crazy.
Crazy. How could you guarantee that? We're making the thing up. Now, again, if God gave the Torah, then of course God can offer a guarantee no one's going to attack on a particular date. But if we're humans and we're pretending to be God, but we're really not, we can't guarantee them. All that would guarantee is if they didn't die out during Shemitah, they would now die out with defenseless borders. But guess what? We're now going to take a look at the actual text, and it does just that. Here we go. We are now going to, here it is, here's the law itself in Exodus. 3 times each year, all your males shall appear before God, the Master, Lord of Israel. And if you ask, what about defense? Who's going to protect us? Look at this. Guarantee in the Torah. No one will be envious of your land when you go to be seen in God's presence 3 times each year. And the dates are not random dates. It's the holiday of Pesach, Passover, Shavuot, the one coming up in 2 days, and Sukkot and Sukkot. Those 3 dates every year, they gather in the temple, and no one's going to attack. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute. Maybe Arabs are just very sensitive. They wouldn't want to abuse our religion and attack us on our high holidays. Well, for those of you that studied history, you may recall that Yom Kippur is perhaps one of the holiest days of the Jewish year. We were attacked on Yom Kippur. So clearly, there's not a sensitivity to our rituals or our religion or anything like that. Even when we're fasting, there's no sensitivity. But why has no one ever attacked on Pesach or Shavuos or Sukkot? You know why? Because God said it's not going to happen. No one will be envious of your land. So not only were we crazy enough to put in this guarantee in the Torah that we could never fulfill if we're making it up, but it actually came true. We actually were never attacked during those 3 dates. So
yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
that's
that's
also because we have troops taking care, like, it's not like the soldiers just leave on those dates, you know? They're still
right.
there.
So Celine, you're right that nowadays that's true. But even nowadays, like Yom Kippur, when we still had troops there, we had less troops. The holidays tend to be times a lot of people go to synagogue, and therefore the defenses are lower. But more importantly, in temple times, when this law was fully binding, no one stayed to defend. In the times of the temple, every single male had to go to the temple. And it wasn't at the times of feminist movements with female soldiers and paratroopers. There was simply no one defending. And you know why? They didn't need to defend because they trusted that God would defend us. And he did. All right, so that's evidence number 2. We're now going to number 3. We're going to move down here to the next thing. These are the kosher laws. Now, I'm not here to preach kosher, don't worry. I mean, I do want to preach kosher, but that's not the topic for now. But the Torah says there's 2 things an animal has to be kosher, 2 signs. It has to chew its cud and have split hooves. If an animal has those 2 signs, it's kosher. If it has neither of those signs, it's not kosher. What if it has one but not the other? So in that case, it's also not kosher. And the Torah goes on to list the only 4 animals in existence that have one but not the other. And here they are in Leviticus. The camel shall be unclean to you, although it chews its cud, so it does not have a cloven hoof. The shafan shall be unclean to you, although it chews its cud, does not have a cloven hoof. The arnevet shall be unclean to you, although it chews its cud, does not have a cloven hoof. And the pig shall be unclean to you, although it has a cloven hoof, does not chew its cud. Do not eat the flesh of any of these animals. So these are the only 4 animals in existence that we went ahead and listed in the Torah that do one, but that have one trait, but not the other. Now,
what are the 2 middle ones? What are the 2 middle animals?
Good question. Who asked that?
Atara.
Yeah. So we're not 100% sure what those animals are referring to, even though modern Hebrew one of them could be a rabbit, but it's not really a mammal. So the most commentators are unsure what they are and basically think they're extinct. So I mean, the camel and the pig are still around, and the other 2 are extinct. But let me ask you, what's the downside of us listing the only 4 animals in existence that have one trait but not the other? What might go wrong?
Temptation.
Temptation of what?
It's prohibited, so you might want it because it's dafka.
Okay,
written.
I like the way you're thinking. So maybe we're gonna get really tempted to eat it. But going back to our claim that Torah is from God, and it's not really from God. What might happen to our claim if we guarantee there's only 4 animals in existence, but one but not the other?
Maybe if another one of those animals comes around.
Yes. Is that what you're going to say, Enrique?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. What if one of them comes around and it wasn't listed? Meaning we don't know the future. How many animals did we even know in ancient Egypt or in the desert in the Sinai? It wasn't like, today where you have Wikipedia and you've got the internet and you could just explore every possible animal in existence. Back then, 3,000 years ago, who knew how many animals there were back then or how many new animals we discovered? To say and go out on a limb and say these are the only 4 animals in existence that have one but not the other is basically setting ourselves up to be caught and to say, you made up the Torah because we just found a new animal here in Africa and a new animal here in ancient Egypt. America was discovered, and now look at all these new animals, and we'd be in trouble. Amazingly, no new animals were discovered. And Bible critics have gone to zoo to zoo. They're exploring all over the world, trying to find these hard-to-find animals, to find one new animal to disprove the Torah, and they have failed. Why have they failed? Because the Torah said there are no more animals except for these 4. Now, you might ask and say, wait a minute. Maybe it's all a trick. Maybe Moses knew this point, and that's why they put the arnevet and the shafan there. So in case you discover a new animal, then they could say, that was the arnevet. Oh, that was the shafan. Meaning maybe it was really a brilliant trick. Maybe they said, hey, look, we want to look like we're smart. It's God, and really it's not. So we'll just make up a few names of animals that don't exist. So when new animals are discovered, you could say, that was the arnevet, that was the shafan. The problem with that approach is, number one, it's only 2 new animals. What if 10 new animals are discovered? But more importantly, both the arnevet and the shafan are just like the camel. All 3, the camel, the arnevet, and the shafan, all chew their cud and don't have split hooves. But the pig is still the only animal in existence that has split hooves but doesn't chew its cud. So we're still really asking for ourselves to get caught and get in trouble. And as I said, it's never been contradicted. In 3,000 years, no one's found any contradictions. All right, we're going to move on quickly because we still have a lot to cover here. Little time left. So I say to you, fine. Oh, and by the way, the Talmud even says, look at this. Was Moses a hunter or an archer? Meaning, how did Moses know there'd be no more animals ever discovered? And the Talmud says, this refutes those who maintain that the Torah was not given from God. I mean, even the Talmud back then recognized that this is basically a bold statement that no other religion would ever make to claim about the future that you're never going to discover new animals. And sure enough, it's come true. Here's a little chart here. Chews cud, split hooves is kosher. Doesn't chew cud, split hooves is the pig. No split with chews cud is camel, shafan, or nevet. And if it has neither, then it's not kosher. All right, so now I say to you guys, hey, how about fish? Let's have a rule about fish. And there is a law for fish. What's kosher fish? Among that which is in the water, you may eat anything that has fins and scales. Those which have no fins and scales, you may not eat since they're unclean. So basically, for fish to be kosher, it has to have fins and scales. If it doesn't, it's not. What if it has just scales and no fins, or just fins and no scales? It's still not kosher. It needs both. But based on the Torah, the Talmud actually says every fish that has scales will also have fins. But there are those which have fins but do not have scales. So meaning, if you're looking for a kosher fish, you're trying to find one, and you find that it has scales and you have not yet found the fins, you could eat it. Because we have a tradition from the Torah that we know that the fish has scales, guarantee will have fins. Obviously, the risk in offering that guarantee in the Torah, we're making it up, is what if someone finds a fish that has scales and doesn't have fins? Will have just been disproven. And again, atheists and Bible critics have gone from aquarium to aquarium in the far reaches of the planet trying to find new fish that contradict this, and they have not succeeded. All right, Western Wall. Yes, go ahead.
I just Googled number of animal species and number of fish species. And the number it came out is animal species 8.7 million and number of fish species 33,100 or something like that.
Amazing. Professor, how many, it was 8 million you said, 8.7 million?
8.8, the Google, Rabbi Google gives 8.7 million species of animals.
8.7 million species of animals.
And 33,100 and something fish species.
Okay, so let's go back to 8.7 million. How many animals do you think Moses encountered in the desert? Probably not 8.7 million, right? Maybe there was 10, maybe it was 20, maybe even 100 different types of species. But 8.7 million are now known, and not one has contradicted what the Torah said would be true. Thank you, Professor. Amazing. Here we have the Western Wall. During the almost 2,000 years of Jewish exile and dispersion from Israel, many wars have been fought over Jerusalem. All told, the city has been destroyed and rebuilt no less than 9 times, with each conqueror further attempting to obscure the glorious Jewish past. But through the centuries, one symbol has remained intact: the Western Wall. Miraculously, it represents the indestructibility of the Jewish people. Yet, amazingly, well before the destruction of the temple, in Shir HaShirim, it already pointed that God stands behind our wall. And the commentaries say, what's that referring to? He stands behind our wall. This refers to the Western Wall of the temple. Why so? Because God has sworn that it will never be destroyed. And take a look here. Why not? When the temple was being built, the work was divided among different sectors of the population. The building of the Western Wall fell to a lot of the poor, and they worked hard to construct it, as they could not afford to hire laborers to do their work for them. When the enemy destroyed the temple, the angels descended from on high and, spreading their wings over the wall, said, "This wall, the work of the poor, shall never be destroyed." Amazingly, the Western Wall, which is probably the biggest target for any terrorist, and they've tried many times. You know, they have metal detectors. They've tried many times to get there with bombs and all sorts of things. And obviously the IDF is playing a big role in that. But the biggest role, I would suggest, is being played by God. Because God said it's never going to be destroyed. And therefore, even with the best terrorist strategy, it's not going to happen. All right, we're moving back to the next. By the way, if you fasten your seatbelts, we're only getting bigger and better as we go here. We're now moving along. Here we go, the Rambam. Maimonides is recognized in the 4 corners of the globe as one of the most famous of all Jewish commentators. He's an acclaimed author, esteemed philosopher, renowned physician, and master Talmudist. This is his legacy. Maimonides is known more popularly as the Rambam. An acronym for his Hebrew name is Rabbi Moses ben Maimon Rambam. The Rambam, who lived in Egypt, was a much sought-after medical expert, and he served as the personal physician for the royal Egyptian court. But most of all, the Rambam was a prolific writer of the most important topics of Judaism. His magnum opus is called Mishnah Torah, on the subject of the 613 commandments, is revered until this day as the most authoritative, comprehensive codification of Jewish law. It is a marvel of Jewish scholarship and was composed in Egypt. Here is a verse back from Exodus which says, God said to Moses, "Paro will not heed you, so that my marvels may multiply in the land of Egypt." This is talking about the original Moses, but there's a saying that from Moses until Moses, meaning from the original Moses until the Rambam, there was none as great as Moses. So the Vilna Gaon was asked, since we believe that every single person who will ever live is in the Torah somewhere, his story is told in a hidden way, where is the Rambam in the Torah? And he said this verse, because of the acronym, Resh Mem Bet Mem, the acronym in this verse talking about Moses in Egypt is the Rambam's name. So you might say, well, maybe there's a lot of places that have acronyms, you know, with the Rambam's name. When the computer searched the entire Torah to find any other appearance of 4 consecutive words which form an acrostic Rambam, it was discovered that this is the only occurrence in the entire Torah. Out of approximately 80,000 words, this is the one place, the only place in the entire Torah where we find an acrostic Rambam, exactly in the verse talking about Moses and Egypt multiplying his wonders and his marvels. Now, Rabbi Michal Bar Weissman, a prominent 20th century Jew, scanned this section to find allusions to the Mishnah Torah. Since the Rambam wrote the Mishnah Torah, perhaps in this section of the Torah, the Mishnah Torah is also hidden in there. In the only verse in the entire Torah we find an acrostic of the Rambam, he found the words Mishnah encoded. Look at that. Mem, Shin, Nun, He, every 49 letters. So skipping 49 letters between the letters, 7 times 7, you know the significance for your previous session. The word Mishnah is found in the Rambam. but he did not find Torah after that. So it was a little bit disappointing. He had Mishnah every 49 letters, right by the Rambam, but no Torah. So it was cool, it was nice, but Mishnah Torah is the name of the book. Anyway, for some reason, he kept looking further and further, and sure enough, several verses later, for every 49 letters apart, there's Torah, Tet, Vav, Resh, He. Impressive, but still disappointing. Why the big gap from Mishnah to Torah? If it was really significant, you would think it would be 49 letters after the Hey, come to the Mem. Someone decided to count how many letters between Mishnah and Torah, and you're not going to believe it. The Mishnah Torah, which is written about the 613 commandments, there were exactly 613 letters between Mishnah and Torah. So in the only place in the entire Torah we have the Rambam's name in an acronym, on the one verse talking about Moses and his wonders and marvels in Egypt, where the Rambam was a doctor and a physician and had marvels in Egypt and lived in Egypt, that's the only place where his name appears. And right there, then and there, you have Mishnah Torah, his magnum opus, the book that he wrote, the main book on the 613 commandments, separated by exactly 613 letters. All right. If you haven't yet got excited, get excited now, because we're about to go on the final lap of our journey. You are looking now at the scroll of Esther. This is the scroll that we read on Purim. It is an amazing, amazing text about the Purim story where Haman tried to wipe out the Jewish people, and miracle of miracles, we survived. There were hidden miracles. We didn't necessarily see God, but we understood that it was from God. And this is every Megillah scroll looks like this on this particular page when it talks about the 10 sons of Haman. I'm going to read the English very quickly just to go over what's happening at this point in the story. It's towards the end of the story, right after the Jews got back at the bad guys. And the Jews struck at all their enemies with a sword and with slaughter and destruction, and did as they pleased to those who hated them. And in Shushan, the capital, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men, including, and it now lists the 10 sons of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. That same day, so by the way, let me ask you, who was just killed? Who did we just kill? The Jews just killed who? Anyone want to scream it out?
All of the family of Haman.
Yes, 10 sons of Haman. Excellent. That same day, the number of those killed in the Shushan was reported to the king. The king said to Queen Esther, the king was very powerful, in Shushan, the capital, Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men, including the 10 sons of Haman. We just see it again now. Right? We've now seen it twice. They've been killed, right? They're dead. And the king says, what is your request now? It shall be granted to you. What is your petition further? It shall be fulfilled. So the king, this very powerful king, says to Esther, you can have anything you want. What is your request? Now that we've just, almost everything just happened. Now those 10 sons are dead. And you know what Esther says? Esther replied, if it pleases the king, allow the Jews of Shushan to do tomorrow as they have done today, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows. What? What is she talking about? What is going on? Judaism doesn't believe in this. The 10, they're dead already. They're dead. So what does she want? She wants to glorify, show off. Hey, look, let's hang up the 10 dead men. Judaism doesn't do that. And she could have anything she wants. She could have asked for a new temple. Please rebuild the temple. She could have asked to give lots of money and riches to the Jewish people. She could have asked for so many things. And she asked to kill 10 dead men? It doesn't make any sense. And the text gets even stranger when we go back and look at it now. It really gets strange. Look at the 10 sons of Haman. See how they're like extra big? These are the sons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the 10 sons. When you look at these letters, do you see any letters that are the wrong size from the rest? Anyone see a letter that's off size from the other letters of the 10 sons?
The pen.
The shin.
Okay, we got a shin over here. I think someone said, what else?
The tough up there.
The tough, because we got a small tough. We've got a small shin. Anyone see anything else?
What is that, a Zion?
A small Zion, excellent.
Yeah.
Talia, the Hebrew coming through. So we got the small tough, the small shin, the small Zion, and an extra large vav. Every Megillah has this. It's inexplicable. Every Megillah, small tough, small shin, small Zion, and a large vav. And there are times in the Torah where there are small letters or large letters, and usually the commentaries will explain, oh, this small letter represents humility. this large letter represents power. In this case, most of the commentaries say, I don't know. It's strange. Stumped. No clue why you'd have these strange letters in every Megillah. And most people did not know until very recently. It's only very recently that we were able to finally figure out why these letters are small. Let me take you on a journey. Haman tried to kill all the Jews. He wanted to do genocide, wipe us out. Who in more recent history also tried to do genocide, also tried to wipe out the Jewish people?
The Nazis.
The Nazis, right? Hitler, exactly. And interestingly, the Talmud says that even though we don't know where Amalek is today, Amalek is where Haman comes from. That's the people whose mission in life is to destroy the Jews. We don't know where they are today, but the Talmud says that many of them went to a place called Germania. Place called Germania. Sounds a little bit like Germany, that many of the Amalek, that Nazis actually are descendants of Amalek. So you might say, whoa, maybe Esther's sort of hinting at the future, maybe, perhaps, I don't know.
In Italian, Germania is Germany.
There you go. So if you look at the New York Times here, there were actually 11 Nazis sentenced to death. So it wasn't 10, it was close. We said 10, it was 11. 11 were sentenced to death, but one of them, Göring, this is from 1946, Göring ends life by poison. So one of the Nazis committed suicide, 10 others hanged in Nuremberg prison for Nazi war crimes. Doomed men on gallows pray for Germany. Now, interestingly, in the Purim story, there were 10 sons. Haman also had a daughter. Anyone know what happened to Haman's daughter?
She dropped her feces on top of his head, and then she killed herself.
Right. Excellent,
embarrassment.
Enrique. Exactly. So Haman's daughter committed suicide. Göring was actually a transvestite. He used to wear women's clothing. So amazingly, you had the 10 sons of Haman and one daughter who committed suicide. 10 others get hanged. You got these 11 Nazis. One girl-like Nazi commit suicide. 10 others get hanged. A little bit of correlation. Nice. I'll tell you more, though. The trial kept getting pushed off with appeal after appeal after appeal. Finally, on October 1946, October 16th, finally were killed on Hoshana Rabbah. That ended up being on a Jewish holiday, coincidentally, in Nuremberg. They killed them on the Jewish holiday, Hoshana Rabbah. The Zohar says, on the 7th day of the Sukkot holiday, Hoshana Rabbah, the judgment of nations of the world is finalized. Sentences are issued from the residence of the king. Judgments are aroused and executed on that day. So coincidentally, Hoshana Rabbah is the day when God gets back at the world for things they did against the Jews. Okay, nice. But the Jewish date is even more impressive. The Jewish date, as the appeals kept going on and on, ended up being on Chaf Av, the 21st date of the Hebrew month of Tishrei, which in the Hebrew calendar is Tuf Shin Zayin. The exact 3 letters that are small, inexplicably, in every single Megillah throughout history. Tuf Shin Zayin is the exact date over 1,000 years later when coincidentally the 10 Nazis happened to get hanged after multiple appeals in Nuremberg trials for their crimes against the Jewish people. Now, what about the large Vav? So the Jewish calendar actually goes in cycles. There have been several Tuf Shin Zayins since creation. The Tuf Shin Zayin that happened during the Nuremberg trials was the 6th, number 6 Tuf Shin Zayin. So meaning it could be that large Vav is saying not just any Tuf Shin Zayin, it's the 6th Tuf Shin Zayin. That's when I'm going to get back at them. That's when it's going to happen on Hoshana Rabbah. And if we reread this text now, it makes a little bit more sense. Let's go back to the Megillah here. So we said that the 10 sons of Haman are killed, and the king says to Queen Esther, by the way, it says the king. God's name is never mentioned in the Megillah. And the Talmud says that when it says the king, it's actually referring to God. So God's name is not there, his name is hidden, but when it says the king, it means God. And Esther was a prophetess. So it's God says, the king, God says to Queen Esther, in Shushan, the capital of Judah, slain straight 500 men, including 10 sons of Haman. And God says, what is your petition further? What is your request now? It shall be granted. What is your petition further? It shall be fulfilled. And Esther replies to God, if it pleases the king, meaning God, allow the Jews of Shushan to do tomorrow, Machar also means future, allow the Jews in the future, as they've done today, and let Haman's 10 sons, B'nai, Bes Aseres B'nai Haman, let Haman's 10 descendants be hanged on the gallows. So this conversation makes a lot more sense once you consider that we're not talking about the 10 actual sons who were already killed And we're not talking about a conversation with the king, Achashverosh. We're talking about Esther speaking to God, and Esther asking in the future, knowing what's going to happen to the Jewish people in the future, the terrible atrocities the Nazis, the descendants of Amalek are going to do, the descendants of Haman, please let them be hanged, let B'nai Haman be hanged. And God said, you got it. It's like the only way this could be better is if the Nazis themselves said, you're right, we did this, it's God. And amazingly, if you look in Newsweek, that's exactly what happened. Newsweek article from 1946, October 28th. Go here towards the bottom. I'm going to make this a little smaller because I'm having trouble seeing it here. Let's go there. Oops, I went the wrong way. There we go. All right. Only Julius Streicher went without dignity. He had to be pushed across the floor, wild-eyed and screaming, "Hail Hitler!" Mounting the steps, he cried out, "And now I go to God." He stared at the witnesses facing the gallows and shouted, "Purim Fest, 1946. For some strange reason, the Nazi himself, as he was about to be killed in Nuremberg in front of all the cameras, he said, "Purim Fest, 1946. That somehow he knew that this was God getting back at the Nazis for what he promised Esther many, many years ago. How in the world could he have known that? Probably God put the words in his mouth. But at the end of the day, this is just another piece of evidence that seems to just be crazy, one thing after another, to show that only God could have written this Torah and could not have been made up.
Would you please send us this article? Because I just tried looking it up and I couldn't find it, but I'd love to read it.
You got it. Okay, please remind me
Maybe
afterwards.
Maybe into like the WhatsApp group, yeah.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, I want to just summarize a few things. We did a lot and want to just put it all together. So we've gone through, believe it or not, only a sampling of the thousands of pieces of evidence to support the divine origin of the Torah. I want to now share with you Pascal's wager. Pascal, as you may have heard of, is a great mathematician, a great philosopher. You have heard of Pascal's triangles. Pascal was the man. So Pascal suggested the following wager. He also believed in God. And he said, hey, let's use an example here. We're going to use, let's say, Dory and Maya. Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah.
All right. So let's pretend Dory comes back from a long day of school and of work and of Zoom classes, and she sees Maya in the room. She says, Maya, wow, you got a whole pie of pizza. Can I have a slice? And Maya's like, of course you can have a slice, by all means. So Dory's about to take a slice. She picks up the pizza. She's about to eat her pizza, and all of a sudden Celine comes running in, and Celine says, Dory, don't eat that pizza. If you eat that pizza, you're going to die. And all right, sure, stop switching around. I'm getting confused here. So Celine says, Dory, don't eat the pizza. If you eat it, you're going to die. And Maya says, no, we threw out the poison pizza. This one's fine. And Celine says, no, we threw out the good one. This one's poison. Now, Dory, let's pretend no one's trying to trick you, okay? Maya is 100% sure the pizza's fine, and Celine is 100% sure the pizza is poison, but you're going to die. You've got a 50% chance. If you eat the pizza, you die. Dory, do you eat the pizza?
Honestly, I don't think I would, but it would probably also depend on like who I know more. If she's
right, assuming they're both equally trustworthy, both equally good friends, they both care about you, no one's trying to trick you.
So no.
No, because 50% chance, even if you're hungry, you don't want to risk dying, right? So you'd rather not eat it. So now, luckily for you, you've got Josh Lampert is here. And Josh, you may not know him like I know him, but Josh is like an expert scientist. So Josh does a whole experiment on your pizza, starts pouring chemicals on it. Now you really won't eat the pizza. And Josh says, you've got a 90% chance the pizza is fine. But there's still a 10% chance if you eat the pizza, you're going to die. Do you eat the pizza?
No.
No, still not, right? Even though there's only a 10% risk. But still, the penalty of death is so much worse than being hungry, you don't want to take the chance. So Pascal says the same thing applies to life, to God, and to religion. Maybe there's a God, maybe he wrote the Torah, maybe he didn't. What are the chances? I would suggest, after the evidence we saw today, it's like 99.9999999% chance that God wrote the Torah. But what if it was only 50% chance? Well, let's explore the consequences in both directions. If someone lives their life following the Torah, and it turns out it was fake, it wasn't true, so what happened? You wasted your life? Let's see. You got rest once a week on the Sabbath. You had a more stable marriage life, a lower drug addiction life, a lower death rate, a lower crime rate, more children and more grandchildren and more nachas, more of a stronger community taking care of you. It could be less gossip. It could be you didn't really lose out at all. You know, you could argue that back and forth, how much you lost. Ignorance is bliss. It's not. But you could debate that point if you lost or didn't lose by erroneously thinking there is a God. But what if someone lives life not following the commandments, ignoring the Torah, and it turns out there is a God, there is life after death, there is eternity. So now they just sacrificed not just 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, billions and billions of years. Their entire eternity just went up in flames. So what Pascal says is, even if it's only a 50% chance, even if it's only a 10% chance that it's true, just like with the pizza, you wouldn't want to eat it, so to here, it makes sense to try to follow the Torah just in case it might be true. Obviously for us, where we've seen evidence, 99.99999% chance, it makes sense for us to try to follow it. Now, I'll add, Judaism is not an all or nothing religion. And therefore, God is not expecting any of us to follow everything perfectly. All that is being asked of us to do the best that we can. But if each of us tries our best to be the best me that I could be, for you to be the best you that you could be, one step at a time, one mitzvah at a time, trying to work on things that are easy, but still showing that we're going to try to make this happen. And even if I wasn't convinced that the Torah is from God, but recognizing that it's a safer bet and a smarter bet to follow the laws anyway, then we'll do our best. And 2 days from now, we're actually going to receive the Torah. We're going to have a national revelation once more. It may be in quarantine, maybe you by yourself and not 3 million people together with you, but really, we are with you. We're all together, because the Jewish people receive the Torah ki ish echad b'lev echad, like one person with one heart and one soul. We are one as the Jewish people. And as we prepare for this holiday, perhaps we can work on that theme of loving one another, caring for one another, building our relationships, building ourselves. And if I could add one more thing, if everyone could try maybe to pick one mitzvah, one new mitzvah to try to work on this Shavuot, something where you could be better today than you were yesterday, where you could be better tomorrow than you are today. And if each of us could go into the holiday being a better me, having something spiritually empowering and enriching that I've added to my life, imagine how powerful that holiday experience can become. I want to thank you all so much for your time. It really was an honor and pleasure to learn with you as always. Celine, thank you for the clap there. Very nice, even though you tried to poison your friend. Studying for the sake of studying for yourselves. No ulterior motives.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to stick around, just stay put. Chag Sameach. All right, go ahead, Dory.
I think it was really, really great. I learned so much. I feel like it was very diverse, and we got to hear from different speakers, different topics, and I like the way that it was set up, where basically I had like 2 sessions or 3 speakers. So I really like that aspect, and I really feel that it was impactful, and I learned a lot out of it. So I personally really enjoyed.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, go ahead.
I'm talking about everyone now. So I really liked also the session, and especially today's session was very interesting, because I think like a lot of people at Nefesh Yehudi are searching just for that type of sessions, like where we can actually like see kind of the proof, because like we are missing that part to understand why we are doing it, and how can we be so sure, because none of us are as sure about anything. And this example with the pizza, for example, is a nice example to put it. And also it's really interesting, to have different speakers all the time. For example, last week I had Professor Daniel Nassim. That was very interesting. And like the week before also, scientific way, it's really interesting. And today I had a different rabbi. I didn't catch the name, I forgot the name, but it was also really interesting. We spoke of a different point of view on, of a different view on how we see God and why the Torah is like what it is today and everything. So yeah, it's very interesting. I like
Amazing.
it a lot.
Thank you for sharing. I think that's a wrap. Thank you guys so much for your time and for being with us.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, Chag Sameach, Good Yontiv, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.